given the fact that it is very difficult or impossible to enforce or even to detect, in the case of euthanasia and assisted suicide, those actions which fall foul of the strictures in our criminal code that prohibit any assistance to suicide. Perhaps the thing that we can try to do together is to find ways in which to minimize the harms associated with the practice. And minimize the harms with respect to the very values that the opponents of the practice claim to be basing their opposition upon. When I took part in the debate on assisted suicide and euthanasia, the conviction, when you sort of unpacked it, when you sort of talked to people and tried to get them to spell out their deepest fears about the decriminalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia, the deepest fear was about something that tends to get referred to in public parlance and in academic debate as the slippery slope. Take the cases that have been talked about the most and that have been the basis of the legal actions that might, in the next few months or years, lead to the decriminalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia in this country. All these cases, the case of Sue Rodriguez, the case of Gloria Taylor, are cases of women, strangely both afflicted with the very same disease, which is known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Completely, when you hear these women, incredibly articulate, incredibly rational people who have given a lot of thought to what they were asking for. When they were asked to be able to control the conditions under which they would die, you did not get the feeling, either with Sue Rodriguez or with Gloria Taylor, of people who were acting rashly, of people who were acting because they were clinically depressed. Gloria Taylor, and this was something that was quoted quite movingly in the judgment in British Columbia, we're in British Columbia here, by the Supreme Court of British Columbia. Gloria Taylor said, "I did not want my death to be in contradiction with the way in which I lived my life." A very rational thought that I think a lot of us can understand. So the fear is not that Gloria Taylor and Sue Rodriguez will be able to avail themselves of the help of a physician in ending their lives. The fear is that vulnerable people, people who are not able to speak for themselves as articulately as Gloria Taylor and Sue Rodriguez did, people who may not have the family resources in which to have their interests defended as effectively as they did. The fear is that euthanasia and assisted suicide will come to be administered to them. So what we're worried about is vulnerability. What we're worried about is the vulnerability of the lives of those people who are already the most vulnerable. And so the question is, what kind of regime regulating the practice of euthanasia and assisted suicide is best able to cope with that fear? Is it one in which we have official prohibition, lack of enforcement, right? And therefore, a kind of reign of arbitrariness, which we have heard described in a number of circumstances, where the practice in this hospital, the practice in that hospital, are purely a function of doctors trying to do their best in figuring out what the right thing is to do? Or is it one in which we will attempt, as has been done in the Netherlands, as has been done in Belgium, right, to create bulwarks, to create institutional mechanisms whereby we attempt to ensure that only cases like Sue Rodriguez and Gloria Taylor's will be one which we will admit to assisted suicide and euthanasia, right? In order to avoid that practice being visited upon people who have not consented to it in conditions of full rationality and full information. It seems from the evidence that we've been able to glean from places like Holland and Belgium that the answer is that we had better, for reasons that have to do with the very values that opponents of the practice put forward, we had better do the latter than the former. Regulate, decriminalize and regulate, rather than criminalize and then fail to enforce because of our inability to enforce.